He found the Empress's runaway daughter, and her mother claimed his heart. The capital of Netharis looked like someone had grown a forest out of starlight and bad architectural restraint. Lieutenant Jace Rowan stomped through it anyway, boots clanking against translucent pavement that pulsed faintly with each step. His armor was dust-streaked, his helmet tucked under one arm, and his translator implant was still rebooting after a sandstorm patrol had tried to scrub his brain clean. He'd signed up for joint security cooperation. The brochure had shown blue skies and smiling diplomats. The reality was 12-hour patrols on an alien world where the buildings hummed at you and the food glowed in the dark. What he hadn't signed up for was the crying. The sound sliced through the bustle of the plaza, thin, hiccuping, desperate. Jace slowed. Nethari citizens flowed past him in shimmering robes, iridescent fins along their necks flickering with color as they chatted and pretended not to notice. Then he saw her. She stood in the center of the plaza on a patch of pavement that refused to pulse under her bare feet, as if even the city was holding its breath. Tiny, blue, big dark eyes glossy with tears, a glittering dress smudged with dust, a small stuffed creature, something like a bear made of star silk, crushed in her arms, its stitched eyes softly glowing. Jace's gut tightened. That was universal. A lost kid was a lost kid. He slipped his helmet onto his hip, lifted both hands in what he hoped was a non-threatening gesture, and approached. "Hey there," he said gently. His translator lagged half a beat, echoing his words in melodic Nethari. "You look a little off course." She sniffed, shoulders shaking. Her gaze flicked to the human soldier towering over her, then dropped back to her toy. I cannot locate my mother," she whispered. The translator struggled, but the panic in her voice was clear enough. "She was there and then, gone. And the guards, they told me to stay put. Then they chased the loud noises. Then everyone left." Jace glanced around. The crowd was doing that thing people did when they desperately didn't want to get involved. Eyes carefully elsewhere, feet moving faster. Of course. He crouched down until they were closer to eye level, armor plates creaking. "Name?" he asked, softer. She hugged the glowing teddy closer. "Lyra." "Lyra," he repeated. "Nice to meet you. I'm Jace." He tapped his chest plate, then pointed toward the far side of the city, where a cluster of towers knifed into the sky, haloed in gold. "And I'm pretty sure the person you're missing is somewhere up there." She followed his gesture and swallowed. "My mother is the High Empress." Jace froze. The plaza's hum kept going. So did his heartbeat. Everything else just stopped. He cleared his throat. "Yeah," he muttered. "That tracks." Lyra's chin wobbled. A fat tear slid down her cheek and landed on the toy's stitched nose. It flared brighter for a second, reacting to her distress. "Everyone is afraid to touch me," she murmured. "They bow and whisper and move away, but I do not know where to go." There it was, the part that made him incapable of walking away. Jace held out a gloved hand. "Okay, little star," he said. The nickname slipped out before he could censor it. "How about this? I'll get you home. One piece, minimal additional dirt, no promises about my dignity. Deal?" She stared at his hand, at the scuffed armor and faint scars along his fingers where the glove didn't quite cover. Then, slowly, she reached out. Her tiny, cool fingers curled around his. The pavement underfoot resumed its faint pulsing. The city approved. "Deal," Lyra whispered. As they started toward the distant towers, the plaza's ambient noise faded behind them. High above, the palace rose like a cluster of frozen suns. Jace squinted up at it and muttered, "Please let your mother have a sense of humor." Lyra blinked up at him. "She does not." "Fantastic," he said. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear." The palace should have been a 15-minute walk away. With Lyra's hand in his and half the capital gawking at them, it took an hour. Netharis Prime, the jewel of the Nethari Imperium, didn't believe in simple streets. Everything was flowing ramps and spiraling walkways that braided around levitating gardens. Bridges arced between towers like ribbons of glass. Vendors floated platforms of goods beside them, fruit that shed soft light, jewelry that sang when you touched it, tiny fish in hovering globes of water. Jace tried not to stare like a tourist, but it was hard. Even after months on planet, the place still looked like someone had given a cathedral to a mad engineer and said, "Go wild." Lyra clung to his hand, her fins, delicate membranes along her neck, pressed flat with worry. Every now and then, a Nethari citizen would take one look at the embroidered crest on her dress, a many-pointed star wrapped in a crown, and stop dead. One older vendor actually dropped to one knee, hand pressed over his heart. "Star Heiress," he whispered in Nethari, eyes wide. Jace's translator spat the word into his ear. "Princess." "Cool, no pressure." "Keep walking," he told Lyra quietly. "The sooner we get you back to Regal Mom, the sooner I can go back to pretending I know what I'm doing." "You do not?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "Absolutely not," Jace said. "I improvise. It's a human specialty." By the time they reached the outer palace gates, the whispering had turned into a low, rippling murmur that followed them like a tide. 2 lines of palace guards stood at attention on the stairs, their armor liquid silver and their faces expressionless. A shimmering energy field arched over the huge entrance, flickering with pale light. Jace stopped just short of it, lifted his free hand, and did his best non-threatening smile. "Lieutenant Jace Rowan, Terran Defense Corps," he said. "Found a lost VIP wandering near the Sunside Plaza." Lyra stepped half behind his leg, peeking out. "He helped me," she said, her voice small but clear. "He called me Little Star." The guard's eyes shifted, just slightly, from neutral to something like shock. One of them pressed 2 fingers to the crest at his throat, activating a comm node. "Princess Lyra has been found," he said. "She is unharmed. Repeat, the heiress is unharmed. She is accompanied by the human liaison." The gates peeled open like folded light. A transport pod descended from above, a sleek, teardrop-shaped craft that settled on invisible supports. Its surface caught the glow of the city and scattered it in 1,000 colors. As the hatch irised open, a breath of cool, floral air brushed Jace's face. Lyra tugged on his hand. "We go now," she said, suddenly sounding like she did this sort of thing all the time. "Sure," he muttered. "Why not?" Inside, attendants in pale silk uniforms closed around the princess with soft cries of relief. One of them, the shortest, with a sharp jaw and eyes like chips of clear glass, turned his gaze on Jace. "You are human," he said, as if this was mildly offensive but unavoidable. "Yeah," Jace said. "Unfortunately for both of us." The attendant's fins fluttered with what might have been amusement. "Her Radiant Majesty has demanded to see whoever returns the heiress. You will remain close." "Her Radiant," Jace repeated, then stopped. "Right. Hi, Empress. Perfect." He dropped into a side seat as the pod lifted, humming quietly. The city fell away beneath them, a sea of luminous towers. Lyra glanced back at him from the center of the fuss, clutching her glowing teddy. She mouthed, "Thank you." Jace gave her a quick thumbs up. "Yeah," he said under his breath, as the palace spires swallowed them. "What's the worst that could happen?" The throne chamber of the Nethari Empress looked like it had been designed to make everyone feel small. The ceiling vanished into a haze of light. Columns of prismatic crystal flanked a long path of amber glass leading up to a dais. Holographic constellations drifted through the air like slow fireflies, casting star patterns over polished floors. Jace followed the attendants in, acutely aware of every clank of his armor. Lyra walked ahead, her back straighter now. The fear melted into practiced composure. Only the way she squeezed the teddy bear betrayed her. At the far end of the hall, atop a shallow set of steps, stood the Empress. She was tall, taller than any Nethari Jace had seen, a head and a half above even her tallest guards. Her skin was a deep twilight blue, faintly luminous, and her hair spilled around her shoulders like liquid silver. A living crown of light hovered just above her brow, shifting colors with each slow breath. Her eyes met Lyra's first. All that impossible, intimidating stillness shattered. "Lyra," she breathed, the word barely a whisper. The princess broke into a run. The teddy bear swung wildly. Jace stopped where the attendants spread their arms, creating an invisible line he definitely wasn't supposed to cross. He watched as the ruler of half a dozen star systems dropped gracefully to one knee and swept her daughter into her arms. "You gave the whole palace a heart attack, Starfire," the Empress murmured in Nethari, too soft for the translator to bother with. Lyra just buried her face against her shoulder. The moment lasted just long enough for Jace to feel like an intruder. Then the Empress straightened, her expression sliding back into something regal and contained. Lyra remained tucked against her side, fingers gripping the edge of the Empress's sleeve. "Who brought you back?" the Empress asked, voice ringing through the chamber. Lyra lifted her head and pointed. "Captain Jace," she said. Jace winced. "It's Lieutenant, actually, but—" Dozens of luminous eyes swung toward him. Attendants, guards, courtiers he hadn't even noticed. The weight of the gaze pressed down like extra gravity. The Empress descended the steps. No one made a sound. "You are the human liaison assigned to our peacekeeping mission," she said. Her galactic standard was flawless, musical. "Jace Rowan of Terra." Jace cleared his throat, tried to remember which protocol applied to alien goddess-looking woman who could probably disintegrate him with a thought. He settled for a stiff, probably unsanctioned half-salute. "Yes, Your Radiance," he said. "Found her in the South Plaza. Looked lost. Didn't seem right to leave a kid crying next to a snack stand." A faint ripple moved through the watching nobles, a wave of barely contained scandal. The Empress's lips twitched. "You approached an unaccompanied royal heiress without authorization. You took her hand. You spoke to her as if she were ordinary." Jace opened his mouth, realized there probably wasn't a right answer, and closed it. Lyra solved the problem by stepping away from her mother and marching back to his side. She reached up, wrapped her fingers around one of his, and announced to the entire court, "He was not afraid of me." The silence that followed was thick enough to chew. The Empress looked from their linked hands up to Jace's face. Whatever she saw there made something in her gaze soften, barely. "Then it is I who owes you," she said quietly. "You have returned what is most precious to me." That landed heavier than any medal he'd ever been given. "I was just doing what anyone should have done," Jace said. "You know, basic child not abandoned duty." The Empress exhaled slowly, as if biting back a smile. "What you call basic, my court calls unusual." She extended a hand, palm up. "Protocol demands a formal reward. My heart demands something else. You will dine with us this evening, Lieutenant Rowan." Jace blinked. "Dine? With you?" "And with Lyra," the Empress added. "She informs me she has promoted you." Lyra beamed. "He is Commander Starbear." Jace stared at her. "That's not a real rank." "It is now," Lyra said firmly. Courtiers shifted, whispering in musical tones. Human, commander, consort gossip already starting. Jace's stomach sank. His brain, traitor that it was, supplied a single coherent thought. "I am so dead." The Starlight Hall was what happened when someone took the concept of dining room and injected it with 300 years of imperial ego. The ceiling was one massive pane of transparent crystal, displaying the slowly turning planet-side sky. A long table of dark, glassy material ran almost the entire length of the hall, set with floating orbs of light instead of candles. Platters drifted through the air on shimmering force fields, each carrying food that looked increasingly like a science experiment. Jace stood awkwardly near the entrance while a valet in pale robes tugged at the collar of his borrowed tunic. "This is a lot," he muttered. "The fabric is woven with photon thread," the valet said. "It reflects your status." Feels like it reflects my armpit sweat, Jace replied. The valet made a sound that might have been a horrified cough and retreated. At the head of the table, the Empress sat on a simpler version of her throne, less ostentatious, but still extremely, I could exile you with a gesture. Lyra perched beside her, swinging her legs and whispering something to her glowing teddy. As Jace approached, nobles fell silent. Their fins rippled faintly with restrained gossip. "Commander Starbear!" Lyra shouted, waving. A noble 2 seats down visibly choked on his drink. Jace felt his ears heat. "Kid, please don't." The Empress lifted a hand. "If my daughter has granted you a title, it is not our place to deny it," she said, dark eyes bright with unspoken amusement. "Be seated, Commander." He sat. The chair was clearly designed for someone taller. His feet barely touched the ground. Platters drifted closer. One settled in front of him, displaying a dish that looked like iridescent jelly studded with tiny glowing spheres. "What is that?" he asked. "Luminara bloom," Lyra said, "from the ice oceans of Ver." "It sings when it is fresh," an elderly noble added primly. Jace picked up one of the delicate utensils, a cross between chopsticks and tongs, and poked the jelly. It chirped. He pulled his hand back. On Earth, food making noise usually means it's trying to escape. Lyra snorted. The Empress's shoulders shook once. "Eat," she said. "You are safe here." Jace took a cautious bite. The jelly dissolved on his tongue, tasting like lemon, sugar, and static electricity. "Okay, that's actually great," he said. 10 out of 10 would risk being mocked by alien aristocrats again. A ripple of laughter went around the table, startled and almost reluctant. The Empress watched him thoughtfully. "You make everything sound smaller," she said. "Less terrifying." "That's one way of saying I talk too much," Jace replied. She tilted her head. "Do all humans deflect with humor?" "Pretty much," he said. "We figured out a long time ago you can't shoot sarcasm. Kind of makes it a good shield." Her gaze sharpened at that. A shield that reveals rather than hides. Intriguing. As the meal continued, she asked questions. Not about troop strengths or tactics, but about rain, music, and street markets. Jace described old Earth cities, the smell of coffee in tiny corner shops, the way a crowd sang off-key at a concert and somehow made it beautiful. Lyra leaned in, wide-eyed. "You have rain that falls sideways?" she gasped. "Sometimes," Jace said. "Storms get weird." "We have storms," she said. "They sing against the palace shields. But Mother does not let me outside." The Empress's jaw tightened. "Safety is not optional," she murmured. "Sure," Jace said. "But childhood isn't either." The words slipped out before he could stop them. The nobles around them went very still. The Empress studied him, eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in thought. "On Terra," she said, "you speak so plainly to your leaders?" "On Terra, my leaders don't tower over me and wear sentient crowns," he said. "But yeah, we try." Lyra giggled again, softer this time. "I like him," she told her mother. The Empress's expression softened in a way that wasn't meant for an audience. "Yes," she said quietly. "I can see why." Jace did not intend to become part of palace routine. He planned to survive one weird dinner, then vanish back to the Terran liaison wing and pretend nothing had happened. Simple. The universe, unsurprisingly, ignored his plan. The next morning, an attendant appeared at his door, eyes wide with a mix of panic and reverence. "Lieutenant Rowan," he said, "you are requested in the Constellation Chamber, at once." Jace scrubbed a hand over his face. "Someone die?" "Not unless you refuse," the attendant said tightly. "The heiress is refusing to begin her lessons until you arrive." Lyra, it turned out, had weaponized stubbornness. The Constellation Chamber was a circular room whose walls projected slowly turning star maps. Lyra sat on a cushion in the center, surrounded by hovering text scrolls that displayed elegant Nethari script. 3 tutors stood nearby, looking like a panel of judges at a very disappointing talent show. When she saw Jace, Lyra lit up. "Commander Starbear!" she cried, launching herself at him. He barely caught her, armorless today in a simple dark jacket. "Whoa there, little star. Thought you had homework?" "It is boring," she said, with great dignity. "They make me recite coordinates." She gestured at the tutors. "Recite, recite, recite." One of the tutors cleared his throat. "Astrogation is vital for an heiress." "Sure," Jace said, "but have you tried not making it soul-crushing?" 4 sets of eyes stared at him. He crouched beside Lyra and nodded toward one of the star maps. "Show me," he said. "What's that one?" She squinted. "Spiral cluster, designation KT-11. Trade routes," she added reluctantly. "And what's special about it?" he asked. "Besides the part that sounds like a filing cabinet?" Lyra hesitated. "It used to be a pirate haven," she said slowly. "The Empress cleared it." Jace grinned. "So why not tell that story? Look." He plucked a stylus from the nearest hovering scroll and drew, over the projection, a crude little ship with skull and crossbones eyes. Once upon a time, there was a cluster full of jerks who didn't pay their fuel tax. Lyra snickered. The tutors looked horrified. 30 minutes later, Lyra could recite the coordinates of KTEV-11, its major trade lanes, and 3 historic battles associated with it. She could also describe the Empress's flagship as the ship that punted the Pirate King into a sun, which Jace admitted might not be technically accurate. When the lesson ended, the tutors retreated in shaken silence. "You are dangerous," one murmured to Jace as he passed. "The heiress listens to you." "Yeah," Jace said. "Terrifying, isn't it?" He turned and nearly ran into the Empress. She stood in the doorway in a simple robe of pale gold, no crown, but no less imposing. She'd clearly been watching. "Your methods are unorthodox," she said. "On Terra, we call it trying not to bore the kid to death," Jace replied. "She's smart. You don't have to chain her to a list." Lyra tugged on her mother's sleeve. "He made the pirates funny," she said, "but also scary. I remember more." The Empress's gaze moved between them. "Her instructors report a 27% increase in retention," she said at last. "In 1 session." Jace blinked. "You already checked?" "I am thorough," she said. Her lips curved, the smallest smile yet. "And you, Lieutenant Rowan, are apparently effective." "Don't sound so surprised," he said. "I am not displeased," she replied, "which, for my court, is equivalent to wild enthusiasm." Lyra laughed aloud. The Empress glanced at her daughter, and something soft passed over her features. An ache Jace recognized from tired parents in Terran cities. "You have given her laughter," she said quietly. "In these halls, that is rarer than you think." Jace shifted, uncomfortable with the weight of that. "I just talk too much and draw stupid pictures," he said. "Kids do the rest." She watched him for a long moment. "Stay," she said at last, "for a while, as her companion in study. The court would probably call it glorified babysitter." Jace heard something else. Trust. "Yeah," he said. "All right, I can do that." Lyra grinned so hard her fins flared bright silver. Somewhere beyond the chamber, gossip began to coil and twist like smoke. By the end of the week, everyone in the palace knew Jace's face. Guards nodded when he passed. Servants whispered behind his back. Nobles stared too long, their fins shifting with disdain. The human had become a fixture, trailing Princess Lyra through gardens, sparring with young cadets in the practice yards, eating strange, glowing snacks he'd learned to mostly trust. He tried to ignore the whispers. The Empress's pet, her experiment, her weakness. It worked until it didn't. He was cutting across one of the upper courtyards with Lyra when a figure stepped into their path. The courtyard's ambient hum dipped a notch, acknowledging a change in tension. The newcomer wore armor darker than the others, edged with razor-bright filigree. His fins were braided with bits of metal, signs of rank Jace had learned to recognize. A scar cut across one cheek, glowing faintly violet where it met luminous skin. "Human," the man said. Lyra shrank back immediately, grip on Jace's sleeve tightening. "Lord Valor," she whispered. Jace hadn't met Valor, but he'd heard the name. Commander of the Palace Guard. Old blood. Traditional to the point of fanatical. "Afternoon," Jace said lightly. "Did I miss a security briefing?" Valor's gaze slid to Lyra, lingered on her trembling fins, then returned to Jace. "You walk freely in sacred spaces," he said. "You touch what is not yours to touch. You place your crude humor before the heiress, and the Empress allows it." The contempt in his voice on that last word was barely veiled. Jace's smile sharpened. "If you have a problem," he said, "take it up with your boss. I'm just the guy making sure she doesn't get lost again." Murmurs rolled across the watching guards and servants like distant thunder. Valor's jaw tightened. "You mistake tolerance for acceptance," he said. "We are not impressed by your novelty. If you wish to stand in these halls, prove you have the right." Jace's brows rose. "And how exactly do I do that? Sing? Juggle? Tell you how to file a complaint in triplicate?" "The right of measure," Valor said, voice cold. "Single combat, first blood, before witnesses." Lyra gasped. "No," she said. "You will hurt him." Valor didn't look at her. "The human can refuse," he said, "if he is content to hide behind your skirts." Jace exhaled slowly. He could walk away. No one on the Terran side would blame him for refusing an honor duel with a guy twice his size and probably 3 times as fast. But Lyra's fingers were digging into his arm hard enough to hurt, and Valor's eyes were already declaring him a coward. "Fine," Jace said. "Right of measure. First blood. No killing. You fall on your own sword. I'm not filing the paperwork." Valor's fins flared with offended pride. "Agreed." Within minutes, the practice hall filled. Guards lined the perimeter, murmuring in low, excited tones. A few nobles appeared on the higher balcony, eyes bright with vicious curiosity. Lyra dug herself into the front row, clutching her teddy so hard its seams creaked. The Empress arrived last. She took up a position on the balcony, flanked by advisors whose fins fluttered with agitated color. Her expression was flat and unreadable. Jace stood in the center of the ring, armored only in a lightly shielded training vest. A staff hummed softly in his hands, vibrating with alien tech. "You can still yield," one of the younger guards murmured as he stepped back. "Not my style," Jace said. "Besides, I've survived worse than a grumpy traditionalist with a glowing sword." Valor entered the ring in full ceremonial armor, a slender energy blade in his hand. It hummed with caged light. "The terms," a herald intoned, "are thus: the first to draw blood while remaining standing is victor. The right of measure will determine honor, not rank. All blows short of lethal are permitted." "So, basically, don't die," Jace muttered. "Got it." The chime sounded. Valor moved like liquid metal, fast, precise, almost silent. His first strike came in low, aiming to sweep Jace's legs out from under him. Jace barely spun away, the energy blade kissing the edge of his boot. The crowd hissed. Valor followed up with a flurry of strikes that forced Jace backward, his staff ringing with each parried blow. The vibrations buzzed up his arms. "You are slow," Valor said. "Awkward, human." "Working on it," Jace grunted. He let himself stumble, just a little, forcing Valor to overextend to press the advantage. The blade sliced past his shoulder, searing the air. Jace dropped his weight, swept the staff low, and clipped Valor's ankle. The commander went down on one knee, eyes flashing. Gasps echoed. Jace stepped back instead of pressing the advantage. "You good?" he asked. "I'd hate to win because you tripped over your own ego." Valor snarled and surged up. The next exchange was brutal. Jace felt the line of the blade graze his vest, heat licking his ribs. In return, he slammed the butt of the staff into Valor's gauntlet, making the blade flicker. Momentum. It was always about momentum. Jace feinted left, then pivoted hard right, stepping into Valor's guard. For a split second, their faces were inches apart. Enough time for Jace to see the contempt there, the certainty of superiority. He brought the staff up and cracked it against the edge of Valor's helmet, hard enough to jar but not fracture. At the same time, he twisted the commander's sword arm just enough. The energy blade kissed Valor's own cheek. Light flared. A thin line of violet blood welled under the cut. The hall went utterly silent. Jace stepped back, breathing hard. He let the staff dip in acknowledgement. "First blood," he said. "You okay?" Valor touched the cut, staring at the bright smear on his fingers. His fins quivered with fury and something uglier, a shamed realization. The Empress's voice cut the silence. "The rite is complete," she said. "Honor has been measured." She descended from the balcony, each step ringing like a gavel. When she reached the edge of the ring, she looked from Valor to Jace. "You broke formality," she said to the human. "You used tactics considered undignified." "Yeah," Jace said, still catching his breath. "Back home we call that not dying." Lyra snorted into her teddy. A few guards couldn't quite smother their smiles. The Empress's gaze softened by a fraction. "But you did not break the rite," she said. "You won. Cleanly." She turned to Valor. "And you, Commander, have been reminded that arrogance stains honor more deeply than blood." Valor bowed stiffly, jaw clenched. "As you decree, my Empress." The Empress faced Jace again. "You risked injury to defend your place here," she said quietly. "You could have refused." "Kid was watching," Jace replied. "Can't preach bravery and then run for the exit." Lyra's eyes shone. For the first time, the Empress's composure cracked into something like real warmth. "Very well, Lieutenant Rowan," she said. "You have been measured. You may stay." 3 days after the duel, the Empress showed up at Jace's door wearing a cloak. That alone would have been enough to freak him out. The High Empress did not wear cloaks. She wore luminous gowns, living light, and the weight of an entire empire. Jace said intelligently as the door slid open. "Did someone misplace your throne?" She stepped inside, the hood casting her face in shadow. Under the cloak, she wore a simple jumpsuit of dark fabric, no crown, only a slim band circlet hugging her temples. "Do you trust me?" she asked. He stared. "That's a hell of an opening line." Her lips twitched. "Answer." Jace thought about Lyra's laughter, the way the Empress had watched her in the Constellation Chamber, the way she'd spoken after the duel. "Yeah," he said. "I do. For some reason." "Good," she said. "Then put on something less armored. We are going outside." "Outside where?" "Into the city," she said. He blinked. "Wait, you don't go into the city. I've heard 6 nobles say the Empress hasn't walked the streets in centuries." "They exaggerate," she said. "It has only been 81 years. That's not better." She watched him, patient. An Empress could command, but right now she was asking. "Lyra says you told her there is more to Netharis Prime than mirrored halls and scripted lessons," she said. "Show me." Jace exhaled. "You realize your security team is going to have a collective aneurysm." "I have already informed Valor," she said. "He has assigned a discreet perimeter. He may gnash his teeth, but he will obey." The idea of Valor gnashing his teeth was enough to push Jace over the edge. "Fine," he said. "Give me 5 minutes." They took a side exit, shielded by the cloak's built-in distortion field. To Jace's amazement, it worked. Most people on the street saw them as just another pair of tall, shadowed figures. The distant glimmer of palace guards on rooftops, however, told him they weren't exactly unattended. They walked through market streets Jace knew mostly from patrol routes. Without the armor, he felt more exposed, but less like a walking warning sign. Vendors shouted in melodic Nethari, offering shimmering fabrics, spices that released tiny sparks when disturbed, carved crystal toys that hovered just above your palm. Children darted between stalls. Adults haggled, laughed, and gossiped. The Empress walked among them like a ghost. "This is my city," she murmured. "I have seen it in reports and holograms, from balconies and transport pods. But not like this." Jace bought a skewered roll of something that smelled like cinnamon and ozone from a cart and handed one to her. She stared at it. "What is this?" "Street food," he said. "The only way to really know a place." She took a cautious bite. Her eyes widened. "It crackles," she said. Tiny sparks fizzled against her tongue. "Fun, right?" Her laugh was small but real. "Indecorous," she said. "Unworthy of dignity. Delicious." They turned down a side street lined with small temples and music dens. A cluster of street musicians played a low, thrumming tune, their instruments catching light. "Is that worship?" Jace asked. "Once," she said. "Now it is expression. My people used to sing only for gods. Then they realized they could sing for themselves." He watched her while she watched her people. The cloak hid her crown, but not the way space seemed to bend around her. "How often do you give yourself this?" he asked. "Just seeing instead of being seen." She hesitated. "Rarely," she said. "Responsibility is heavy. It leaves little room for wandering." "Yeah," he said quietly. "It does." They paused at a small plaza where children splashed in a shallow fountain of lightly glowing water. A girl not much older than Lyra slipped and fell, soaked. She burst into surprised laughter. Her guardian scooped her up, scolding and cuddling at once. The Empress's hand tightened on the edge of her cloak. "I forget," she said, voice barely audible over the noise, "that not everyone holds their breath when they look at me." "Maybe they shouldn't have to," Jace said. She looked at him. "You say that as if it is simple." "It's not," he said. "But you started. You walked out the front door." Her gaze softened. "You make rebellion sound like a stroll," she said. "Sometimes it is," he replied. "The big stuff starts with little steps." On the way back, they passed a stall selling cheaply made stuffed toys. None glowed like Lyra's teddy, but they tried. The Empress paused, studying them. "The craftsman imitates palace designs," she said. "That symbol," she pointed to a little embroidered star. "It is based on our crest." "Kids get to pretend they're princesses," Jace said, "or heroes, or teddy commanders. That's not disrespect, that's participation." She picked up one of the toys. It chirped weakly. "Perhaps," she said. "Or perhaps my court has forgotten that participation is not the same as defiance." "You could remind them," Jace said. Her eyes met his over the battered stuffed thing, and something shared and dangerous passed between them. "I am considering it," she murmured. The palace always hummed. It was a subtle thing. Air systems, shield generators, the low thrum of distant reactors. Jace had grown used to it, the way humans tuned out background traffic noise. That was why, days later, he noticed when the hum changed. It sharpened, tightened, picked up a faint, almost subliminal stutter, like a heartbeat under stress. He was in the training yard with Lyra, running through a very serious teddy bear security drill, when his implant pinged with an encrypted alert. Alert. Localized shield fluctuation detected. Eastern spires. He frowned, tapping his ear. "Rowan, status?" The liaison officer on the other end sounded stressed. "We've got reports of power anomalies and comm interference in the Noble Wing. Netharis security says it's routine maintenance, but my gut says different." Lyra looked up at his expression and immediately stopped mid-swing. "What is wrong?" she asked. "Maybe nothing," he said. "Maybe a whole lot of something." His worst suspicions arrived 5 minutes later, in the shape of Valor. The commander strode across the yard, armor humming at a harsher frequency than usual. "Lieutenant," he barked, "the Empress requests your presence in the strategy chamber, immediately. Bring the heiress." Lyra's fins flattened. "Mother is frightened," she said softly. Valor's gaze flicked to her. "Your mother is not frightened," he said. "She is occupied." That was enough for Jace. He scooped Lyra up, ignoring his protesting ribs, and followed Valor at a jog through corridors that felt suddenly narrower. When they entered the strategy chamber, half the wall displays were already lit with maps, troop placements, and flashing red icons. The Empress stood at the center, one hand braced on the table, the other clenched at her side. "Report," she said without preamble. Valor bowed. "Localized insurrection, Your Radiance," he said. "A coalition of noble houses has triggered shield failures in the eastern spires and locked down 3 transport hubs. They are broadcasting demands: abdication, reversion to council rule, and the removal of alien influence." His eyes flicked briefly toward Jace. "Of course they are," Jace muttered. The Empress's gaze was hard enough to cut. "Casualties?" she asked. "Minimal so far," Valor said. "We have contained the main force, but we have lost contact with—" The chamber's door hissed open again, interrupting him. An out-of-breath guard stumbled in, armor scorched. "Highness," he gasped. "The rebels. They've seized control of the East Transit Hall. They took hostages. Staff. Advisors." He swallowed. "And your sister's household." The Empress's jaw clenched. "My niece," she said. "Children." Lyra's arms tightened around Jace's neck. "We move now," the Empress said. "Full strike team. No more playing defense." Valor hesitated. "You cannot go personally," he said. "If they see you on the field." "They already used my daughter as leverage once," she snapped. "I will not sit on a throne while they threaten more of my blood." Silence. Jace stepped forward before his brain could catch up with his mouth. "Then I'm coming with you," he said. The Empress's eyes widened a fraction. "Lieutenant, with respect, Your Radiance, you're the biggest target in 3 star systems," he said. "You're going to be throwing telekinetic light storms around? Someone has to watch your back." Valor opened his mouth to object. The Empress lifted a hand. "Arm him," she said, "and get my daughter to the deepest vault in the palace. She does not leave until I say so." Lyra gave a small, strangled sound. Jace shifted her enough to meet her eyes. "Hey," he said quietly. "You remember the story about the pirate cluster?" She sniffled. "Yes." "What did the Empress's flagship do?" "Kicked the pirates into a sun," Lyra said, tears wobbling. "Exactly," Jace said. "I'm going to go make sure she does that to some very stupid nobles. You're going to stay where it's safe and boss the teddy bear around. That's your mission. Got it, little star?" She swallowed hard and nodded. He set her down gently. She clung to his sleeve for an extra heartbeat, then let go. "Come back," she whispered. "Plan on it," he said. As Valor led Lyra away, Jace turned to find the Empress watching him with an expression he couldn't parse. Fear, fury, gratitude, something more tangled than all 3. "You presume much," she said. "Yeah," he said. "Humans do that." She huffed out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "Very well, Jace Rowan," she said. "Fight beside me. Let us show my noble houses what happens when they mistake compassion for weakness." Her eyes flared with inner light. The air thickened, humming with the rising power of someone who'd spent centuries holding back. Jace picked up a rifle from the rack, checked the charge, and rolled his shoulders. "Let's make some very poor rebels very regretful," he said. The palace hum sharpened again, resolving into a single, focused note. War had come to the crystal halls. Crystal corridors that usually sang with soft light now pulsed an angry red. Alarm glyphs flashed along the walls, casting jagged shadows as Jace and the Empress strode toward the eastern spires with a strike team at their backs. Netharis soldiers fell in around them, armor reconfigured from ceremonial gleam to matte battle mode. Their weapons hummed low, charged and ready. Valor moved at the front, issuing clipped orders into his comm crest. "The rebels have sealed the transit hall," he said. "Internal shields are compromised, but external barriers hold. They're herding hostages toward the central platform." "Trying to reach the primary transport ring," the Empress finished. "If they secure it, they can scatter across the city before we can contain them." "Then we cut them off before that," Jace said. He wasn't armored the way they were. A gravplate vest hugged his torso, and his rifle was a Terran make with hastily mounted Nethari targeting mods. It weighed just right in his hands. They rounded the final corner. The East Transit Hall was chaos wrapped in beauty. Arched gateways opened onto dormant transport pads, their rings of crystal currently dark. Overhead, a web of energy conduits glowed sickly, flickering under sabotage. Smoke smeared the air. Shattered mosaic tiles crunched underfoot. Rebel nobles and their private guard contingents had dug in behind makeshift barriers, overturned benches, shield emitters, bits of broken statuary. Their armor was unmarked, but their posture screamed entitlement. Near the center, a group of hostages knelt with hands laced behind their heads. Among them, a cluster of children huddled together, tiny fins pressed flat, eyes streaming. The Empress's jaw clenched. "Final warning," she called, her voice amplified not by tech, but by raw power. "Release them and surrender. I will hear your grievances in council." A tall figure stepped onto the central platform, helmet off. His fins were braided in the style of old lineages, hung with metal rings. His gaze was cold and hungry. "Your council is a farce," he said. "You parade weakness as virtue. You bring aliens into sacred halls." His eyes cut to Jace. "There it is again," Jace muttered. "Always me." The Empress took a step forward. The air around her shimmered, pressure building. "You endanger children to make a point?" she asked, voice trembling with contained rage. "Is this your idea of strength, Lord Hevron?" "So long as they live to inherit a pure empire," Hevron snapped, "my conscience is clear." He pressed a hand to a control column. A crackle of energy ran along the hostage area, stun collar fields. Insurance. Jace felt his stomach twist. He'd seen that tech before, on slave ships humanity had helped shut down. Seeing it here, in the heart of an empire that liked to think itself civilized, made his grip tighten on the rifle. "All right," he said quietly. "We're done negotiating with that guy." Valor's voice brushed his ear. "Portable shield projectors ready," he murmured. "On your mark, human." That last word was different this time. Not contempt. Something closer to respect. Jace filed that away for later. "On my shot," Jace said. "Empress, Mevira," she said without looking at him. He blinked. "What?" "My name," she said, eyes locked on Hevron. "If we are to fight side by side, you may as well know it." He almost smiled. "Mevira. Okay. On my shot, you blow those collar relays to hell." "Crude," she murmured, "but accurate." He exhaled slowly, dropping into a half-crouch. The hall shrank down to lines and angles, the curve of the platform, the shimmer of the relay control nodes embedded in the floor near Hevron's feet, the twitch of trigger fingers behind cover. Hevron spat more rhetoric. Jace stopped listening. "Now," Jace said. He popped up, rifle barking 3 sharp bursts. The first shot hit a rebel's weapon, sending it spinning. The second and third went high, deliberately wide, meant for the relay housings, not the people. The rounds carried tiny Nethari charge hooks Valor's team had slapped on them. When they struck crystal, they stuck and flared. Mevira moved. Power poured off her in a wave, pale light surging from her hands and gripping the charge hooks like handles. The energy they'd stored inverted, amplified, racing back along the conduit paths. The collar field around the hostages imploded with a crack of light and a spray of sparks. "Go!" Jace shouted. Valor's troops dropped shields in front of the hostages in a synchronized snap. Energy barriers flared, shielding the kneeling cluster as rebels reacted. Too slow, too surprised that anyone would dare to break their neat little hostage equation. Jace shot the first one who tried. The battle that followed was ugly and fast. Rebel weapons spat slashing bolts of coherent light. Nethari loyalists responded with disciplined precision. Mevira was a storm at Jace's side. Every gesture sending invisible force rippling through the air, hurling attackers away or pinning them to the ground. When one rebel broke from cover and lunged toward the children, Jace didn't think. He vaulted the nearest railing, hit the floor hard enough to jar his teeth, and slid between the man and his target, rifle up. The shot caught the rebel in the shoulder. He spun and went down, his blade clattering harmlessly aside. "You will not touch them," Mevira said, her voice cold enough to frost crystal. Hevron realized he was losing and tried to run. He didn't make it 3 steps. Mevira blurred, the air around her cracking as she pushed her telekinetic limits. She hit the platform with enough force to shatter the decorative inlays. Hevron's body slammed sideways, pinned by invisible bands. "You've forgotten what this throne is for," she said quietly. "You see power as something you hold, not something you use to shield." He spat at her feet. "You would throw away centuries of purity for a warm-blooded stray." Jace took that personally. "Got news for you, buddy," he said. "Warm blood is better than cold." Hevron sneered. "You think you are important, human? You're a story, a distraction, the moment you outlive your usefulness." Somewhere behind Jace, a shot rang out. He had just enough time to register that it hadn't come from his side. Pain tore through his ribs like white-hot glass. The world lurched, tilted, and went sideways. Sound folded into muffled echoes. The floor rose up faster than Jace wanted. He hit it, and felt something crunch in his side. For a moment, all he could do was gasp. "Rowan!" Vaylor's voice, distant, furious. "Jace!" That was Mevira, sharper, closer. He blinked past the bright haze at the edge of his vision. A rebel, half hidden behind a fractured pillar, stared at him over a still-smoking pistol. His eyes were wide with terror and something like awe. "I hit him," the man whispered. "The alien pet, Vaylor took him down like a storm, his blade a clean line of light. Jace lost track of what happened to the gunman. The hall's cacophony dimmed as loyalists surged forward, mopping up the last resistance. The hostages were dragged to safety under shield cover. Children wailed. Adults sobbed in relief. Emergency med drones buzzed in like angry beetles. Mevira dropped to her knees at Jace's side. Up close, without the usual buffer of ceremony, she looked frighteningly real. Sweat beaded along her hairline. The glow of her skin had gone sharp and brittle. Her hands shook as she pressed them above the spreading stain on his vest. "Stay with me," she said. "Do you hear?" "That is an order, Lieutenant." He tried to laugh and hacked up copper-tasting warmth instead. "Gonna have to write that up," he wheezed. "Shooting me is a serious violation of hospitality. Bad Yelp review for your palace." "That was not amusing," she snapped, but her eyes were too bright. "You've been pierced by a disruptor pulse. It's scrambling your cells." The med drone hovering nearby chirped agreement and started spraying sealing foam around the wound. It tingled cold. "Ah," Jace said faintly. "So, not great then." "You are not dying," Mevira said. The words weren't a prediction. They were a command. He tried to focus on her face, on the way her crown light flickered like a shaken flame. Her hand was pressed over his, both of them sticky with diluted blood. "You and Lyra," he said. "Still need someone to teach the teddy bear salute." Her expression cracked. "Do not say goodbye," she whispered. "I forbid it." "Bossy," he murmured. "Kinda like that about you." The drone buzzed louder. Someone shouted for a medical transport. Jace's vision tunneled, narrowing down to Mevira's eyes. For a heartbeat, rage flared there. Pure, lethal, focused outward. Then it turned inward, shredding guilt and centuries of practiced distance. "I have ruled for a very long time," she said. "I have watched empires rise and fade. I have presided over funerals and victories. None of it has frightened me." Her fingers tightened around his. "You terrify me," she whispered, "because you are finite, because you keep throwing yourself between my people and danger with no thought of your own survival." "Human thing," he slurred. "We're bad at calculated risk." "You are bad at self-preservation," she snapped. His lips twitched. Fine line. His awareness slipped sideways for a moment. He heard Lyra's voice in his memory. "Come back," and latched onto it like a rope. "Jace," Mevira said. "Look at me." He did. "There is more I would say," she murmured, "but it will wait until you can mock it properly. Do you understand?" He managed the barest nod. Her expression shifted into something cold and resolute. She gestured sharply at the medtechs. "He lives," she said, "or every one of you answers to me." The drone emitted a panicked series of beeps and increased its efforts accordingly. As they lifted him onto the grav stretcher, Jace caught a last blurred glimpse of Mevira standing over Hevron's restrained form, eyes blazing. He decided he really didn't want to be that guy. Then the ceiling blurred. The hum of the palace returned, pitching high, then receding into gray. Coming back felt like surfacing through syrup. Jace's first impression was light, soft, shifting light that pulsed with his heartbeat in slow, reassuring waves, blue, then gold, then back again. Something cool rested against his forehead. His chest ached in a deep, bone-heavy way, but the sharp burn was gone, replaced by a dull throb. "Welcome back, Commander Starbear." The voice was small, earnest. He turned his head and found Lyra sitting at the edge of the bed. Her legs dangled, not quite reaching the floor. The glowing teddy sat in her lap, stitches newly reinforced. "Hey, little star," he rasped. "You okay?" She nodded, fins flickering fast. "Mother said you saved Aunt Ressa's twins," she said, "and the staff, and Valor's second in command. And then you got shot and she almost exploded the whole hall." Jace blinked. "Sounds dramatic." "It was," Lyra said solemnly. "They made me stay in the vault, but the walls hum when she uses that much power. It made my teeth shake." He managed a weak smile. "Sorry I missed the show." Her eyes filled. "I told you to come back," she whispered. You almost didn't. Almost only counts in horseshoes and orbital debris," he said. "I'm here." She sniffed, then leaned forward and carefully placed the teddy bear against his arm. Its stitched eyes brightened briefly, syncing with his biometrics. "He will watch you while you sleep," she said. "Just in case." "Good," he murmured. Always wanted a glowing security blanket. A soft presence filled the doorway. "Lyra," Mevira said, "it is time for your mid-cycle rest." Lyra scowled over her shoulder. "I am not tired." "You are drooping," Mevira said gently, "and your tutors report you nearly fell asleep in gravitational physics." "That is because gravitational physics is boring," Lyra muttered. "Not because I am tired." Even so, she slid off the bed and padded to her mother's side. Mevira rested a hand on her head, fingers threading through silver hair. "Say goodnight properly," she murmured. Lyra turned back and lifted her chin. "Sleep," she said, "but not forever." Jace smirked. "Yes, ma'am." When she'd gone, the medbay felt suddenly larger and quieter. Mevira stepped closer. Without her crown and ceremonial armor, she looked different. Younger, somehow, though Jace knew that was ridiculous. Her hair was braided back, loose strands escaping around her face. She wore a robe the color of deep water, simple and unadorned. "How bad was it?" he asked. She sank into the chair Lyra had vacated, exhaling slowly. "The disruptor bolt fractured your ribs and destabilized a section of tissue near your heart," she said. "Our healers had to rebuild parts of you at the cellular level. They were impressed by your capacity to endure." "Good old human stubbornness," he said. "Human recklessness," she corrected, but there was no heat in it. "You came within 4 heartbeats of permanent cessation." He swallowed. "That close, huh?" Her gaze dropped briefly as if the memory physically hurt. "Yes," she said. "Too close." Silence stretched between them. The med monitors hummed softly. Somewhere down the hall, a healer laughed at a quiet joke. "You were terrifying, you know," Jace said eventually. "Out there." Her brows rose. "Terrifying?" "In a good way," he added quickly. "You took every hit that should have landed on someone else and turned it inside out. Those rebels are going to have nightmares for decades." "I would prefer they have remorse," she said sharply. Then softer. "But nightmares will do until then." He watched her fingers flex restlessly against the arm of the chair. "Mevira," he said. The name still felt strange and right in his mouth. "You all right?" "Am I all right?" she repeated slowly, as if the question were new. "I do not know." "That's honest," he said. "I'll take it." She looked at him, something raw flickering behind the darkness of her eyes. "When I saw you fall," she said quietly, "it felt as if the entire palace cracked. Not with power, with something smaller and vaster. Fear, he said. She inclined her head once. Yes, she said. Fear, for someone who is not my child, for someone who chose to throw himself between my people and death for no reason but his own impossible heart. Humans are weird, he agreed. We keep doing that, can't help it. Her lips curved, a shaky half-smile. You speak of your species as if you are separate from it, she said, but you are very human, Jace Rowan. Impossible. Infuriating. Charming, he suggested. She huffed. In your mind. They fell quiet again. Finally, Mevira drew a breath as if steeling herself. While you were in stasis, she said, my advisors tried to use your injury. They spoke of withdrawing Terran troops, of retracting my invitation to your people. Aliens bring chaos, they said. Look what has happened since you allowed them in. Let me guess, Jace said. They conveniently ignored the part where your own nobles staged a coup. Yes, she said flatly. They did. She reached out and with surprising gentleness took his hand. I could have agreed with them, she said. A century ago I would have. But Lyra wept herself to sleep, demanding that I not let them send you away. And I realized, I do not want a palace without your footsteps in it. Jace's heart did something very medically irresponsible. Careful, he said softly. That almost sounds like you like me. The corner of her mouth lifted. You jest, she said. But this is no simple fondness. You have altered the gravitational constant of my existence, Terran. He swallowed. That's quite a line. It is not a line, she said sharply. It is inconvenient truth. Her grip tightened on his hand. I do not want you as a guest, she said, or as a temporary curiosity. I want you here, at my side, with me, not as a subordinate, but as... She searched for the right term. In our oldest traditions, she said slowly, there was a role for one who stood beside the ruler not in blood or rank, but in shared purpose, shield consort, heart ward. They were equal in ceremony, different in duty. They have not existed in generations. He stared at her. Are you asking me if I want a promotion, he said faintly, or a marriage proposal? Yes, she said simply. His brain blue-screened for a second. You understand I'm just a guy from Terra who failed calculus twice, he said eventually. I'm not exactly imperial material. That is precisely why I am asking, she said. You do not see yourself as grand. You see needs, people. You made Lyra laugh in a hall built for intimidation. You pulled nobles out of their own myths and made them remember they have hands as well as titles. She leaned closer. I have had respect, fear, obedience. I am tired of being worshipped, she whispered. I would rather be argued with. You are very good at that. He snorted. High praise. I am not asking you because it is politically useful, she said. In fact, it will cause chaos. Many will object. Some will leave. Alliances will shift. She drew in a slow breath. I am asking because you make this impossible burden feel less solitary. Because when you look at me, you see a woman trying her best, not an untouchable symbol. Because I do not want to imagine a future in which you are not here, complaining about the food portions. His throat tightened. That's not... You're not playing fair, he muttered. I am not playing, she said. He closed his eyes for a second, listening to the monitors, the whisper of the palace, the memory of Lyra's giggle, and the feel of Mevira's hand gripping his as he bled. Mevira, he said, opening them again. You realize what you're asking me to give up, right? Earth, my career. Any hope of dying quietly in a Terran retirement home, yelling at kids to get off my lawn. She smiled, soft and luminous. Stay, she said, and you will die yelling at nobles to stop treating my daughter like a relic. He laughed, then winced as his ribs protested. Great, he said, going out in style. Is that a yes? She asked, voice quieter than he'd ever heard it. He looked at her, really looked, at the exhaustion etched in the lines around her eyes, the fierce tenderness she tried to hide, the centuries of held-back softness finally starting to leak through because one stupid human refused to treat her like a god. "Yes," he said, before he could talk himself out of it. "Yeah, I'm in. For as long as you'll have me." Relief broke across her face like sunrise. "Very well," she whispered. "Then rest, shield consort. We have a great deal of scandal to cause." He grinned, lightheaded. "Can't wait," he said. The Nethari had a word for the day the palace changed. Sarevketh, the turning. Jace just called it the day I wore the most ridiculous coat in the galaxy. He stood before a mirror that stretched from floor to ceiling, staring at a reflection he barely recognized. The black and silver coat fit like it had been poured onto him, etched with thin lines of crystal that glowed faintly along their edges. The crest of the Empress, a many-pointed star cradled in a hand, had been stitched over his heart. "You look like a holodrama prince," Lyra said, sprawled on the couch with her teddy. "Except your hair is wrong." "What's wrong with my hair?" Jace demanded. "It's too organized," she said. "You should make it messy, like when you forget we have lessons." "That's called being busy," he said. "And my hair is fine." He ran a self-conscious hand through it anyway, mussing it up. Lyra beamed. "Better." The chamber door chimed. Jace's stomach did a slow, swooping flip. Valor entered first, in full ceremonial armor, face carefully neutral. Behind him, Mevira stepped through. For a moment, Jace forgot how to breathe. She wore a gown spun from living light. It shifted between deep blue and luminous gold depending on how she turned, tracing every line of her tall, strong frame. Her crown floated just above her brow, brighter than he'd ever seen it. No longer a symbol of remote authority, but of someone who had chosen, very deliberately, to be present. When her eyes met his, all the noise in his head dropped away. "You clean up well, Terran," she said softly. You too," he said. Very glowy. Lyra made a gagging noise. "You are making faces at each other again," she announced. "It is embarrassing." "Hush, little star," Mevira said, but she looked amused. "You will ruin the solemn atmosphere." "There is nothing solemn about Jace's hair," Lyra said. Valor cleared his throat. "If you are finished mocking the shield consort's grooming," he said dryly, "the court awaits." The throne hall was fuller than Jace had ever seen it. Nobles packed the lower tiers, their robes a riot of jeweled color. Above them, representatives from allied worlds watched from floating platforms. At the far end, the dais had been reshaped, the single throne replaced by two narrower seats side by side. Gasps rippled through the hall as Mevira and Jace entered together. "Don't trip," Jace muttered to himself. "You will be fine," Mevira murmured. "If you fall, I will catch you." Her fingers brushed his. Even that tiny contact steadied him more than the grav anchors in his boots. They stopped at the base of the dais. A herald stepped forward, his voice amplified to fill the hall. "Before the eyes of Netharis and our allied stars," he said, "we bear witness. Mevira, High Empress of the Imperium, chooses by will and law to name a shield consort. Jace Rowan of Terra, step forward." Jace did. The weight of 1,000 stares pressed down on his shoulders. "Jace Rowan," the herald intoned, "you come from a world beyond our oldest charts. You are not of our blood, nor bound by our customs, and yet you have fought for our children, bled for our halls, and stood beside our Empress when others fled. Today you are asked, will you bind your path to hers, not as subject, but as shield and companion?" The words weren't a surprise. He'd gone over them with Mevira and a very nervous protocol team. Hearing them aloud was something else entirely. "Yeah," he said. His voice echoed more than he liked. He cleared his throat. "Yes, I will." A murmur went around the hall. Some incredulous, some approving. Mevira stepped down from the dais until they stood on the same level. Up close, the crown light cast little halos on his cheeks. "Jace Rowan of Terra," she said. "You have a talent for making the profound sound simple. Allow me, for once, to do the opposite." He swallowed. "That's unfair." She ignored him. "I have lived through eras," she said, voice carrying, but her eyes locked on his. "I have seen sworn companions fail me. I have watched counselors betray, generals waver, priests attempt to turn devotion into chains. I have known loyalty. I have known duty. I have known fear in the hearts of those who bow." She lifted a hand, palm up. "I have not known this," she said. "Someone who looks at the weight on my shoulders and simply says, 'Let me carry some.' Someone who argues with my decrees because he believes I can do better. Someone who makes my daughter believe the palace is a place of games as well as rules." Her hand trembled slightly. "I offer you the old title revived. Shield Consort," she said. "Not as ornament, but as equal in the matters of heart and home. Will you accept this bond, with all the scandal and struggle it invites?" He thought about the life he was leaving behind. Then he thought about Lyra's giggle, about Mayvira walking the markets in a cloak, about rebels realizing too late that this Empress did not stand alone. He took her hand. "Yeah," he said, voice steady this time. "I accept. I promise to argue with you, protect the kid, mock the nobles, and make this place a little less terrifying." Laughter rippled through the hall, not derisive, but startled and genuine. Even some of the stiffest nobles cracked involuntary smiles. Mayvira's eyes shone. "Then by my authority and my will," she said, "I name you Jace Rowan, Shield Consort of Netharis, Heart Ward to the Empress, Bridge of Terra." She leaned down, as tradition dictated, and pressed her forehead lightly to his. For the Nethari, it was a blessing reserved for the most sacred moments. For Jace, it felt like gravity rearranging itself. Lyra bounced at the edge of the dais, barely contained by protocol officers. "Kiss him," she whispered loudly. The hall collectively choked. Mayvira's cheeks flushed a shade of deeper blue. "Later," she told her daughter without moving away from Jace. "Some things are not for the entire court." "Rude," Lyra muttered, but she was grinning. The herald recovered enough to declare, "Let it be witnessed, let it be recorded. The age of the Shield Consort returns." The hall erupted, not in polite applause, but in a roaring cascade of sound. Some voices were cautious, others exuberant, a few still tight with resistance. It didn't matter. For the first time in living memory, the Empress did not stand alone on the dais. 3 months later, the palace felt less like a museum and more like a somewhat chaotic household. From the outside, Jace knew nothing had changed. The crystal spires still pierced the sky. The shields still shimmered at their edges. The Empress still presided over councils and treaties. On the inside, the changes were everywhere. Breakfast was now an unholy fusion of Terran coffee and Nethari nutrient infusions. Lyra insisted on sitting between Jace and Mayvira and routinely tried to sneak glowing syrup into his cup to make it proper. "I'm begging you," he said one morning. "Don't caffeinate the syrup. The universe doesn't need that." "It would be efficient," Lyra pointed out. "No," Jace and Mayvira said in unison. Later in the day, Jace walked patrols, not as a guard, but as a presence. People stopped him with questions, complaints, and occasionally recipes. He learned the names of servants who'd never spoken to an Empress directly. He sparred with Valor in the practice yard, trading blows and insults until they both staggered. "You have improved," Valor admitted one afternoon, breathing hard. "You too," Jace said. "You almost kicked my teeth out that last pass." "That was intention," Valor said. "Figured." At Mayvira's insistence, Jace sat in on councils. The first time, nobles stared at him like he'd wandered into the wrong holodrama. By the 5th session, they'd learned the pattern. Someone proposed a policy that made theoretical sense, but ignored actual lives. Mayvira listened, then looked to Jace. "Thoughts?" she'd ask. "Will this get people killed?" he'd say. "Because it feels like it will get people killed." They'd modify, argue, adjust. Not everyone liked it. Several old houses formally withdrew from court for a time. Mevira accepted their tantrums with a calm that masked her private hurt. Jace found her on the balcony afterward more than once, shoulders tense. "You could have kept them by playing the old game," he said one evening. "I am tired of that game," she replied. "Let them sulk. The Imperium is not a toy to be passed between bloodlines like a bauble." He leaned on the rail beside her. "For what it's worth," he said, "the ones who stayed, they're the ones who will matter when it counts." Her shoulders eased. "You have a gift," she said. "You make complexity sound manageable." "You have a gift," he answered. "You actually fix the complexity." They weren't all heavy talks. Sometimes they debated the relative absurdity of Terran bureaucracy versus Nethari ceremonial law. "I'm telling you," Jace insisted one night over a shared plate of Luminara blooms, "your permit process for rerouting an energy conduit is insane." "You require 3 separate forms to adopt a domestic animal," Mevira shot back, "and a home inspection." "That's because dogs are chaos incarnate," he said. "We're protecting the animals from us." She laughed, full, unguarded, the sound ringing off the crystal. "It still astounds me," she said when she caught her breath. "What does?" he asked. "That someone who speaks like a street vendor," she said lightly, "now shares a throne with me." He bumped his shoulder against her arm. "And yet, here we are." Lyra's growth was the change Jace loved most. She no longer moved through the halls like a relic on display. She ran sometimes, when she thought no one was looking. She dragged her tutors out to see the gardens instead of just reading about them. She convinced Mevira to schedule unstructured time into her day. "It is essential for the development of imagination," she argued, quoting one of her own lesson texts back at them. Mevira caved. Jace pretended not to be proud. At night, when the palace finally quieted, Jace and Mevira often found each other on the balcony. The city stretched below, its lights like a fallen sky. "Do you miss Terra?" she asked him once, voice low. He thought about it. "Sometimes," he said. "I miss stupid things. Street vendors shouting, rain that smells like pavement, my sister's awful cooking, the way old men in my neighborhood always sat on the same steps every evening." Her hand found his. "And yet you stayed," she said. He squeezed back. "And yet I stayed," he agreed. "Because this—" He gestured at the city, the palace, her. "This feels like something I can help build. And because you and Lyra have terrible comic timing without me." She smiled, soft and earnest. "You are insufferably confident for a being who nearly dies every few months," she said. "Hey," he protested. "I've been very good lately. Only one near-death experience this quarter." She rolled her eyes, but leaned into his shoulder. Below, the city hummed. Above, the stars turned, indifferent and immense. In between, on a balcony of glass and light, a human and an Empress shared the kind of quiet that comes only after you've survived your own worst stories and decided to write different ones. And at the doorway, small and sleepy, Lyra watched them with her teddy under one arm and a secret little smile. Her empire had always had an Empress. Now it had a heartbeat. The end. If you love human chaos, alien empresses, and found family among the stars, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story.